Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is where I get to chat with people I've connected with over the years in the world of arts and entertainment. And today I'm very happy to have with me the very talented, legendary artist Ken Whiteley. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, Tommy. I'm delighted to talk about anything you want.
Well, let's start out by talking about how many you've got over 60 albums to
No,
your
no,
to
no.
your credit.
I have this, my new album, Keep Going, is my 37th album, and that includes different group configurations that I've been part of, records with my brother Chris, when we made the Junior Jug Band albums. But in total, actually, of all the albums, I've been on, I don't know, over 200 albums. I've produced close to 180 albums.
I got it
Uh,
backwards. I meant to say you've been in the business for over 60 years. And I
60
see in my
years.
notes now,
That's
I
true
see.
too. Yeah, I joined the Musicians Union when I was 14.
Okay.
So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I had a special union permit back in the day. I think I was 17, and the legal age to be in the bars was 18. And the thing was, I was supposed to go wait in the lobby in between sets with that
Uh-huh.
special union permit, but everybody assumed because I was in the band, and so they served me whether I should have or not. Anyway, so 36 albums is what I have here. And you've played with so many people and like you say, produced and collaborated with and so on. But I'll tell you, I was happy to see the names Pete Seeger and Stan Rogers. My wife was really excited when I told her that you worked with Rafi and Fred Penner.
Well, there you go. I mean, and that doesn't even get into the sort of, the blues people, John Hammond and Leon Redbone and, Blind John Davis, these people like that. So I've covered a lot of ground in my musical life. But of course, Pete was a huge inspiration to me. And, I don't know what to say beyond that, that just, he continues to inspire me. And I first met him. I met him across from City Hall. He was playing at Massey Hall that night, and decided to go skating at Nathan Phillips Square before the concert. So I was there down there when there used to be pawn shops and music stores across the street from City Hall, which dates when we're talking about. And I said, Mr. Seeger, could I please have your autograph? you know, and I had a copy of Broadside magazine, which he would contribute to. So I got him to sign that. But later, in festivals and things like that, we met each other, and he was famous for writing, handwritten letters to people, and he said, Ken, what we should do one of these times, there are these big folk music conferences, and he says, we need to get a big gospel choir to come marching in, with the whole gospel choir, and so he played at Massey Hall again uh, one time, and I helped actually arrange for some gospel singers to come and sing with him. I got to play with him, and then later, even a few years later, he came up with his grandson Tao Rodriguez Seeger and the blues singer Guy Davis, and was involved in recording those performances as well. So
Now, I've heard that he's being hailed as almost single-handedly saving the Hudson River.
well, I think obviously it's a group effort, and Pete would be the first person to say it takes many hands to join together to make this stuff happen, and he certainly had a lot of people who jumped in and supported him, but absolutely his role was pivotal in that whole effort. He's was been an environmentalist all his life. I mean, he moved out of New York City and into Beacon, New York, 50 miles up the river from New York City in the, I don't know, like the late 50s, chopping wood and, living in the woods and then, he began to, as the whole environmental consciousness, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring and all these different things. He was just a natural. He already had embraced the values that were being espoused, and he looked from his house. You could look down and see the river, and he would look down and I need to do something right here about this river, which at that time was, the late 60s was so polluted and there was towns, Poughkeepsie, New York, just up the river from him, was getting its drinking water from the Hudson River. And, there's a lot of problems obviously associated with that stuff. Plus, I mean, it goes on and on. Rivers are such an indicator of really the whole ecosystem of a place, and he understood that. So he started this sloop Clearwater to sail up and down the river, and so for many months of the year when it was safe to do so, sort of from May through September, they would sail up and down the Hudson River, give little concerts. Other musicians would come on board, you sign up for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. There was a full-time captain, he raised money for this, and then they started a festival, the Sloop Clearwater Festival, and gradually just changed the consciousness, and I think, again, that's such an important lesson from what Pete would promulgate, that when we embody the values that we would like to see reflected in the world we live in, that we begin to change, the zeitgeist, that we change the consciousness, and that affects other people, and you can spread that out, and it may not be right away. It may not be, this battle or stop this or stop Doug Ford doing this or whatever, but it's still working towards changing the way the whole society functions, recognizing that interconnectedness. And he was such a beautiful embodiment of someone who got that so deeply.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it wasn't a single-handed effort. It does take a community for
Absolutely.
certain. Now, speaking of, when I got the PR information on you, your PR guy said that you were a legendary folk artist. And when I watch your video and I dig deeper, you're not strictly a folk artist. Your palette is huge. And watching the one video, you're multi, and I can see all the different instruments behind you and so on. Now, what sparked an interest in music? Do you remember initially what got you going?
I've always loved music. I would sing as a little kid, just like before I was even in school. And my brother is 3 years older, my brother Chris Whiteley, and we began making up songs when we were little kids. And then in the early 60s, when Chris was about 14, 15, and I was 11, 12 or whatever, he started getting into folk music. And so I always wanted to do whatever he was into. But it wasn't just that. We had this history of love of music. And I was just really lucky that I had someone. And so before his 16th birthday, uh, he really wanted a guitar. My parents had bought him a guitar, but hadn't told. They were going to give it to him on his birthday. 2 days before his birthday, he came home and said, "Look what I just got! I just traded this, a basketball and $10 for this guitar," and so which meant all of a sudden we had two guitars come into the house, not one but two. So then I inherited the lesser of the two guitars, and so we both started learning, jumping right in, and that's really how we got it going. But about the sort of these labels, and I'm someone who has always kind of resisted labels a little bit in a way, because music is music, and there's just there's it's so expressive, and there's so many different ways to play it, and it's all great. It's all vibration. We all can tap into it. Obviously, we resonate, certain kinds of music do resonate more for us than others. And at certain times, I want to hear I want to hear Chet Baker or Marion McPartland on the piano or something, I want to hear some jazz or, I want to get some real roaring gospel or I want to, you know, on and on and on, right? So, yeah, and you mentioned Stan Rogers. Stan was a friend who, by the time we were in our early 20s, we were playing on the folk scene, had been playing for a number of years, and the 70s in Southern Ontario was a real blossoming of creative talent. There were just so many great songwriters coming up, Willie P. Bennett, Dave Essig, Dave Bradstreet, all these different people, and of course Stan Rogers. And Stan had this big, powerful voice. He was a big guy, big presence, and big power, and what a songwriter. And so, I always value the time I got to spend with Stan, who of course passed away in 1983 in a plane crash. So tragically lost, as still really a relatively young man. So
Yeah, it's interesting, that we have so much tragedy in the world and in the music business in general. That said, were you working as a sideman with these people or a collaborator? What was the relationship in general?
So with Stan, it was definitely, as a side person, yeah. And of course his main side people, he always had a bass player and he had several bass players over the course of his career, and his brother Garnet were the mainstays of his backup group. But I played on several records. I did a bunch of shows with him. We played the Winnipeg Folk Festival together. We were part of, as I say, this kind of musical community, and there was a lot of back and forth. I got Stan to come in and sing on some of the Raffi records, actually.
Mm.
And so if you ever see reading the fine print of the credits, you might see a credit for Buckskin Pete, which was the
Ah,
pseudonym Stan took because he thought as in a children's album he needs some appropriate moniker. So that
ah.
was.
Isn't that interesting? It's the show business, is quite interesting. Now you have a brand new album that's just been released at the beginning of the month, and can you give us the title of the album again?
Keep going.
Yeah, okay. Now there is a brand new single, "Keep Going," and I understand this was inspired by something that wasn't quite tragic, but quite painful. So
Yeah,
tell me the
I
story.
slipped. It was like one of those. It was in mid-February. There had been snow, melt, freeze again, snow on top of it, and so there was snow covering some ice underneath, and I slipped on the ice, broke a bone in my ankle, told I couldn't put any weight whatsoever on it for 4 weeks, and I was mostly good about it. I did do a couple of gigs, but wearing my boot and the crutches and stuff like that. But anyway, it for the most part I had to stop really. I couldn't really walk around, and I'm just home. And the one thing you can do sitting down is play the guitar. So picking up my guitar and start playing things, and next thing you know, the songs start coming out, and next thing you know, I'm thinking, wow, here's another. Wow, there's an album here. So then you go in even deeper into that whole process.
Yeah, now you've for most of your career you've worked with some really talented people. On this song, "Keep Going," you play almost everything, and you have a couple of other talents with you. Young Cecile Levy,
Levy, yeah, yeah,
Levy, sorry.
yeah.
Um, how did
She
she
answers
come
to
into the
both.
picture? Do you have a relationship with her in general?
Oh, I absolutely do. I'm Cecile is someone that I have known since she was in high school, and that was 30 years ago. So and she and her sister Amoy have sung with me since that time in the 90s. And it's and Amoy passed away during the COVID pandemic,
Hmm.
not of COVID, but other health related things. And tragically, again, at the age of 50. But Cecile, since Amoy's passing, has really kind of um, stepped out in a way that she didn't when she sang with her sister. She was always kind of, the fancy stuff. I'll let Amoy do that. I just know how to harmonize with her. We can harmonize with anything. And they sang with all kinds of people. Everyone from Tom Cochrane to I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Uh, anyway, all kinds of people that they've sung with, and then for the last 3 or 4 years, she and I have been singing together even more. Just with the two of us, often a bass player and the two of us, that kind of thing, or a drummer, Bucky Berger or Gary Craig, and yeah. So Amoy is great, and she sort of felt. Cecile is great, feeling Amoy kind of on her shoulder, saying, "You go for it, girl."
You
And
know,
so now she's really,
I was gonna comment. I know that feeling because way back in 2007, I lost my only son, and I won't
sorry.
get into all the details. But before that, I was considered, and I considered myself to be an okay singer and an
Uh-huh.
okay artist. And then one night at a gig, I just felt my voice expanding. It felt like I was channeling my son's indomitable spirit. So that I can relate to Cecile on that. Now,
Yeah,
back to the song and the video for Keep Going. I think we should maybe just take a minute and let people have a quick look.
great idea.
Okay.
Let's check it out.
All right.
Caught between the sunbeam and the snowdrop, where the roadway meets the park. Sap leaves its mark upon the pine tree, the warmth and light that follow days of dark. I'll take my rest when I'm tired. I'm not fighting with nature's law. When I'm done, I'll keep going. This rest is just a part. Keep going. 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 The respite park bench in the city, one bench down, an overheard remark, recovering from a fall that wasn't pretty, the unplanned pause that slowly lights a spark. I'll take my rest when I'm tired. I'm not fighting with nature's law. When I'm done, I'll keep going. 'Cause this rest is just a part. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Well, that's really awesome. And the one thing that I noticed, aside from all the instruments you're playing in the video, it seems like it was an organically produced video. How did that all come about?
Making the video itself?
Yes.
Well, I mean, the current reality is such that you kind of have to make some videos with it, and so so my mind was kind of going. So there's a lot of images in the song that were based on things I see. It's actually a lot of it relates to Christie Pitts Park, which is a big park, just 3 blocks from where I live in downtown Toronto, right on Bloor Street. It was an old gravel pit originally. There's a stream that runs under the city that would go right past there in the 1800s, and then it's covered over now. But so just the images of like the sap dripping from the pine tree, and sitting on one of these benches in the park and overhearing someone else's conversation and so on. So how to kind of make it both capture some of those images at the same time showing me playing the song, and I like to record. I mean, this song is one where basically I laid down guitar and vocal, and then I added, bass and drums and Hammond organ and these other parts, and as I'm doing that, I'm recording, again, as they say, thinking ahead for the modern age we live in, get it down while you're recording it. So
It's interesting. And looking at the gear behind you, are you self-producing or do you
I
have a
am, yeah.
producer? Okay.
I have worked with a lot of great producers over the years in different contexts. Um, but yes, I have been self-producing, and I mean, I've done over the years these many albums I've made. There've been a few where I've brought somebody on board as sort of a co-producer, just because I do know the value of when you're writing the songs and singing the songs and playing instruments. It's great to have someone who can sit back and say, um, you know, don't keep doing this. I think you've got it. Or, I think keep going because you're getting really close. Each time is getting better. Try another one. Someone who can sort of be objective and give you that kind of feedback can be really helpful. And I actually am really lucky because I have worked with an engineer, Nick Gelios, for about almost 30 years now. And so he also knows me very well and knows the studio, and he's been terrific at in to some extent making it less critical for me to have that outside producer. But I
It's
also, as a
interesting.
producer, I'm also in favor of, I know the value of having those outside ears.
It's interesting. I was going to say that I've just recently started doing my own scratch demos at home.
Uh-huh.
And I was recently invited to participate at a project at OYARD here in London with a crew of students. And I jumped on the opportunity because it's free. But the issue is when you've got four guys in the booth, it's not as cohesive as when you have one or possibly two, a producer and an engineer. So we ended up with a lot on this track, and I kept trying to tell myself with every mix I got, it's getting better. But ultimately, I had to send it to my normal, regular producer, and he says, "Well, send it to me when it's done." I said, "Well, it is." He said, "Well, that's my critique." So we're going back to square one with it, and when I'm in the studio recording with him and I'm playing guitar tracks, he tells me that I'm always 25 milliseconds ahead of the click. So he automatically nudges it, and he doesn't always tell me. But we need that critical ear sometimes, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really it's something when you've got a community to work with, isn't it?
It is. It obviously it is. I mean, I started. My brother and I started recording. We had a tape recorder that had a sync head. It was like a 2-track tape recorder, but you could put down one mono track and then, with a microphone, and then record another track with it, and it would put them in sync. And so we began doing that in the 60s, when we were teenagers, and then began recording in 1973, again with, and then in 1975, my friend Dave Essig said, "Oh, I know these two brothers in Ancaster who've got a little studio. I think we should go there. I think it would be really fun to just, it's just $10 an hour. It'd be super cheap and easy to record there." This was Bob and Dan Lanois. So we started working with, Daniel Lanois, and and then I continued. They moved into a much bigger studio, better studio in Hamilton and Grand Avenue, and so I did a lot of projects, with Dan Lanois over the years there. Dan was the engineer on Baby Beluga and a lot of those, Raffi records and different records that I made as well.
Someone told me a number of years ago that they really liked what I was doing, and that they could have helped me X number of years ago, whatever, with a record deal, whatever. But he said, I recommend that you work with the very best people that you can.
Yes.
And that to me meant I need to find people who are a step above me. And I can hear in your music that you've had that experience more than once.
Oh yeah. It's right. I mean, it's like, yeah, I was at a recording workshop not too long ago, and I was getting very frustrated because most of the people in the room were playing acoustic music, but the guy who was running the workshop mostly does rap music. And most of that is done like small studios, most of it's done by machines. And and there's a skill to programming the machines. I'm not dissing that and saying there's no skill to that. But his attitude, I'm always like, he says, it doesn't matter what mic you use. And I said, yes, it does. You want to use the best mic you can. You want to play with the best musicians you possibly can. And, it's like, I know half a dozen really great drummers. And if I'm putting together a session for an artist, I'll know this would be the perfect drummer for this project, or this would be my first choice for this project, because everyone has different feels, and some people, you want people who can play with a click and make it sound real and grooving, and other people, we shouldn't use a click for this person. We should just play it live off the floor the way you play it. Your groove is good. Let's get a bunch of solid musicians in here, play it the way you play it. And if it speeds up a little bit as it goes along, that can be adding to the energy in a way that doing something with a click all the time doesn't guarantee you. I use click sometimes and not other times, like when I'm recording myself. So I have a lot of opinions, but absolutely use the best people you can, use the best gear you can, best mics you can, make it sound as good as you can. That's the whole intention.
Anytime I can sing through a Neumann mic, I'm happy,
Yeah.
That said, going back to drummers for a minute, for probably 10 years, I had an iconic Canadian drummer. I won't mention his name. He'll probably know who I'm talking about. But he got to the point where he got too perfect, and he worked with the click every day, and for hours and hours he'd be practicing, and it got to the point where we had to kind of nudge things so they weren't so perfect in the studio. So it's and my producer always says the drums have to be perfect, but that can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah. And in my opinion, feel trumps technique any day of the week. And of course, the great art happens when you have someone who combines feel with that technique. But you have to keep your priorities right. You know, that the feel is the most important thing because you're trying to get someone to feel something when you want them to listen to your music and feel something. And that's the whole intention. And the skill and the craftsmanship and all of those things, you know, the mics, et cetera, serve the cause, but they aren't the cause. They're just serving the cause.
Yeah, there has to be a certain amount of talent, absolutely. Man,
And soul, because it's, you know, it's about connection. And that's really, you know, and you know, as a musician, you know, when you're playing something and really feeling it, that's when your voice opened up. It was because you were deeply feeling something and that opened something up in you. And when you open up, the other people feel that as well. And that's when, so that's the when the magic happens.
you know, when I was a young up and coming guitar slinger, my grandmother, back in probably 76, 77, said to me, "You know, Tommy, you're a pretty good singer and you're a pretty good guitar player, but," she said, "I'll tell you, you'll never be great until your heart is broken." And at the time I thought, "Oh, you crazy old coot. I've had girlfriends. I know what having a broken heart is," but I really didn't, until I lost my son. Then I knew exactly what she meant. And it makes me think of people like Roy Orbison. I watched him live at the London Gardens back around 1982, 83, and it was just so powerful. I couldn't believe the power and the emotion coming out of that guy, and he got a standing ovation, I think, after every song. Years later, I found out that he lost his entire family when he was on the road
Yeah,
in the early days in a house
yeah,
fire. I mean, if you
yeah,
listen to the early stuff, Ooby Dooby, not so great. But by the time he gets to Running Scared and Crying, it's just, oh my God.
yeah, yeah,
And that was that tragedy,
yeah.
you know. Um, and I hope you haven't suffered any of those things. I
Hope
gather
so. I
through,
hope not too. You know,
yeah, but
yeah,
you
we
you
don't.
definitely feel the zeitgeist in your music, and
Yeah.
I think that everybody who doesn't know who you are should. The new album is out. Where can people get the album, Ken?
Well, I mean, they can always go to my website, www.kenwhiteley.com, and it's two E's in Whiteley, like white and then Ley. And but it's on all the streaming platforms and so on. You know, you can buy it from iTunes or Bandcamp. So, you know, I mean, it's out there in the where things are these days. Yeah, come and see me at a gig. You know, I'm playing around Southern Ontario in the next couple months.
Well, what's coming up in the Southern Ontario area in the next month or two?
Yeah, well, I'm doing a house concert this Saturday in Guelph. I'm doing an event at Christie Pitts Park on the 18th. On the over the Easter weekend, I'm going to be doing two concerts and a workshop at a yoga ashram in Val-Morin, Quebec. I've gone down there for many Easters doing those concerts and workshop. Um, and I'm going to be up in Ottawa. They do a thing called Gill's Hootenanny, and I'm getting to lead what and sadly will be the last Gill's Hootenanny, but so that's lots of singing along up there in Ottawa, and on May 2nd I'm at Hughes Room with a big band. Cecile will be there. My friend David Wall, he used to sing in a group called the Bourbon Tabernacle Choir, and
Okay.
Flying Bulgar Klezmer Band and different groups, and this incredible bass singer, which is a rare and wonderful skill that has to be kind of God-given because not everyone can pull this off. But this guy, Pat, you know, so he mostly sings in his church choir. But I met him again. I met him at Long McQuaid, actually, you know, in the keyboard department. And I'm up there for some reason, and I hear this voice from across. Do you have another Ram Carter? You know, this low, deep, rumbling voice. And I go, "Hey, man, do you sing?" And he's got an amazing voice. And he says, "Oh, you know, I sing in my church choir." And so, you know, I said, "Hey, do you want to, you know, I'd love to get together or sing some songs, you know." So he's been a friend also for about 30 years, and so it's great to have. We'll have a great vocal quartet. My nephew Jesse Whiteley is an incredible piano player and organ player. He's going to be on keys. My son Ben Whiteley will be playing stand-up bass. my old friend Bucky Berger, who's been playing with me for 45 years on drums, and yeah, so that the Hughes Room gig will be really fun. But there's lots of other things coming up. There's a Detweiler meeting house down in southwestern Ontario, down in sort of Mennonite country, and it's this old stone building that has incredible acoustics. And I'm there in June, doing a concert, totally acoustic, no mics at all, just in this room that's so resonant, and people come there ready to sing. And anyway, you can go to my website, it has my touring schedule. So
We will do that. I know, Ken, you've got a lot on your plate. You've got a lot of people to see and a lot of things to do, so I don't want to take up your whole day. I do want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this with me. And until next time, cheers.
thank you so much, Tommy. A real pleasure.
Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a one-man production, meaning that I've done all the work, including recording, editing, guest acquisition, etc. The theme song for Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a clip from my original composition, The Burn, all rights reserved. If you enjoy the show and you'd like to help us keep it going, why don't you click on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. We really appreciate it. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, cheers.